Richard Conlon, head of new media at BMI. Richard, what is BMI?
We are a performing right organization, so we represent the copyright interests of songwriters and music publishers when their works, the notes and the words and the lyrics and so forth in a song are publicly performed, whether that's on the radio or in a television program or in a movie on a cable network or in a public venue.
What has been the impact of the internet on your industry?
It's been fantastic. Our business has been based on creating a service or a kit of service for songwriters so that they can be paid when their works are performed. So when we see the internet come along and we see an explosion in terms of potential venues, and we see a real numerical explosion in terms of the number of titles that are being used and the number of performances that are happening, it means that more music is getting out in front of more people.
Is more music, though, being monetized?
Not well enough yet. And that's, I think, the commercial side to this is the somewhat missing link. But I think if the first step is opening up the gate and getting out of a 168-hour programming week, 24 hours a day and 7 days a week, and getting out of that mode and into a more of an on-demand, library-driven mode, what we see is you're going from a couple hundred songs performed in a linear venue or a linear distribution to as many as 800,000 or 900,000 unique titles being performed in a quarter by an on-demand music service.
So what you're saying is the great shift is from the iTunes model to Spotify or Mog?
Yes. Yeah, I think we see a change in terms of use versus own. So I think one of the big changes that's finally happening, it's been a very long time coming, is that we're going from I want to own this in a record, or I want to own it in a CD, or I want to own it on my device, to I just want to get to it. And I want to be able to access this music, and I don't necessarily want to buy it, but I always want to be able to get at it. And we're seeing that trend as a pretty powerful way for people to change their relationship with their content.
What about, Richard, the 180-ton or 180,000-ton gorilla in the room, piracy?
Mm-hmm.
What has been the impact of piracy on the business, and how do we really begin to fight it?
I think you have to do it on a number of different levels. Obviously, you have an enormous impact in terms of unit sales. There's less music being sold. Whether that's because the music isn't as compelling, or whether that's because you have all these alternate forms, or whether that's because the economic model of selling music in that way is something that needs to be revisited. I think it's a combination of all of those things. I think when we address piracy, it's a pretty delicate balance between having the right policy in place, married up with the right kind of infrastructure, but done with a sensibility so that if the world is changing, you kind of change along with the world. So I don't think you will ever be able to sue the world into compliance, but I do think there are probably some network level things that could be looked at some point. But I think you have to be very careful about what consumers are doing, what they want, and try to find the way where you can squeeze some money out of it.
Richard, you represent the right holders in the music business, people who make their living through the sale of music. There are going to be a lot of people in the audience, TechCrunch viewers, who love music, but who are not paying for the music that they access on the internet, who are essentially stealing. What would you say to them? Why shouldn't you steal music online?
Well, I think the first part of it is that it is someone's creative product. It is something that someone made. I think that people are changing the way that they get music, though, and I think that's one of the things that we're finding from some of the streaming services, that maybe you're not going to pay directly to get music, but you'll tolerate a certain advertising load, almost bringing in some of the old ad models and so forth. Maybe you'll share some personal information in order to get to music. But I think that what's really important, and I do believe that American consumers care about creativity, I think that as an industry, in a way, we've almost set ourselves up for this argument. Consumers when we've done a bunch of surveys. A couple years ago, we did one with Penn and Schoen, who did a lot of work with the Clinton administration, and we said to consumers, "Do you really care about creativity? Like, does this matter to you?" And everyone said, "Yeah, no, I totally care. I totally care. Yep. I want to pay for it." And then they said, "But I don't want to get in the middle of your sort of internecine squabbles in the industry." And I think that I'd like my music to come to me with my obligation back to the creator built into it, almost like a radio model, almost an advertising supported model. So I think that we have to look for better ways of monetizing music, but I think that taking a file and ripping it and sending it out to 1 million people, or going on a service and taking music and not paying for it is uncool, and it's not fair.